Hello, folks. It is myself, Chris Gill, and Abdul Kazi here. We're here to bring you a festive tech calendar contribution called the ABCs of Christmas Continuity. Abdul, how's it going today so far?
Good, Chris. Very good. It's not bad. Looking forward to this one. This is always the exciting time of the year. The year is ending. Festive mood, So yeah.
Festive? What do you mean festive? Like Festivus? Festive? No. So happy Festivus to anyone who celebrates. Happy, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all that good stuff. But yeah, I'm excited to bring this content too. Again, great community effort by Festive Tech Calendar. This year fundraiser. Make sure to go out if you can. Please give what you can, but fundraiser for the Beats and Cancer charity this year. So again, they have a Just Giving page. If that's something that you're willing and able to, I know the community appreciates it. That's why we do the content we do. But we also have fun with this too. So that said, let's get going here. And hopefully we'll move on to the next page. So, Abdul, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So yeah, my name is Abdul Kazi. Been in the IT industry for some time now. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and then I co-host Come Cloud with Chris Gill. And if you want to get in touch with me, X, LinkedIn, all those things now. But yeah, looking forward to this one. Thank you for the community, and then over to you, Chris, for your introduction.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So this is at least a snapshot of me. Again, do a little bit of everything from A to Z on, Azure and Zoom devices if they were still around, but primarily focused on Microsoft, the cloud, a lot of mentoring, and a lot of time spent in the industry. So these are ways to reach out to me. These are things that, achievements so far. Again, gracious to be in the MVP program for the fourth year. Fingers crossed for renewal coming up here in 2025. But again, the other side of the pond with Come Cloud with us. So I know recently we finally bumped fists, met in person, Abdul. It's been awesome. But yeah, that's been a great hustle for the past few years. So we can be found there. A lot of great content, a lot of great community folks from that perspective. So let's go over just a brief agenda, what we're trying to cover today. A little bit of ping pong back and forth between Abdul and myself, but we're here to talk about something that's somewhat a little bit in preview, but coming out of preview in some way, shape, or form, and replacing some other tools that you may all be familiar with or not. But let's talk about Azure Business Continuity Center. So if you hear us say ABC or ABCC, it's basically the Azure Business Continuity Center. We'll go and do a little bit of an overview. We'll touch on some use cases for what Azure Business Continuity Center brings to your organization, to your managed partnerships, to your environments. We'll talk on some of the protection capabilities of the Azure Business Continuity Center, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of the continuity and disaster recovery, or BCDR, features that this brings to the table. All right.
So before we jump into the key component architecture, right, Chris? So it still amazes me that people think that cloud is secure or safe, I guess, or safe meaning it's backed up by default. People still think that you do not need to make a backup of this. So just to read, right? Like nothing in the cloud is backed up. So you need to have that kind of planning done. So you need to have a backup in case something gets deleted. You still need to have a backup in case you need to have a disaster recovery. So those kind of things are still needed regardless if you are in the cloud. People think we're in the cloud, everything is fine and dandy, but that is not the case.
No, I love that you hit on that. And nowhere on this slide does it say it, but shared responsibility model. I think I feel like a rinse repeat with that broken record, whatever, but that shared responsibility model is true in form. It's I always say, and it's a good call out. If you have these services, servers, different things running on premises, right? You had to design that backup, that BCDR architecture, make sure that you were scalable, resilient, that things didn't go down, go bump in the night, that you had copies and backups. That same responsibility still needed in the cloud. So, just because you're picking up servers and services and moving out there doesn't mean that it just magically is replicated and available everywhere all the time. So yeah, good call out. So yeah. I feel like we've already touched on a few of these, but that's all right. Most people know by now that the essential tools, for disaster recovery, it's like anything that can happen will happen at some point. If it's, we always joke about DNS or different services that might go, bump in the night. It's never DNS. Oh, it was DNS. The wonderful little haiku. But you want to make sure that any services that you have running up and available are, either minimizing downtime when you have to do any kind of maintenance, or minimizing downtime when there is something that does go bump in the night or during the day. So, any unforeseen events, things that might be just, kind of trip you up, you want to make sure that you design and plan around those. Backup solutions, absolutely 100% critical. You need to make sure that you have, snapshots throughout the day on certain things, whether it's data, your servers, running services, monitoring, near and dear to my heart. Make sure that we actually are keeping a good thumb and a pulse on what's going on in your environments, what may be working well and what may not be working well. So, Abdul, I know you and I both are not alone in this. I'm sure we get audited by all kind of folks. So, keeping monitoring information, keeping those archives of what's really going, comings and goings in the environment really, really help to not only keep you on par, but also keep the auditors at bay too. Make sure that we're not, missing things. And then the scalability integration, just, again, this approach, this, ABC approach, it's cloud native. So it's, it's an approach that is available cloud first, cloud native, to cover the entire architecture. So anything else that I missed here, Abdul?
No, I think that's spot on.
All right.
So so on this one, I would kind of say, like Chris said, that the Azure Business Continuity is a cloud native or cloud-based solution. So a lot of people might be thinking, hey, we're still on-prem, or we have a hybrid environment. Yeah, sure. So with this, you could use this service to back things up. Plus, the other thing is, the beauty of this is you might be a small shop. You might say, yeah, I cannot afford Veeam or the other big players in the market, which charge by the license, by the VMs, or depending on the licensing. So Microsoft actually does a good job. Kudos to them for having a native solution for backup. So I'll give you a perfect example. A couple of years ago, I did not like Microsoft firewalls because they're like, oh, there's nothing there. People were bringing their own firewalls, right? So they were bring their own Palo Altos or Fortinets and whatnot, NVA firewalls. And now Microsoft firewalls are pretty robust. So same thing with this. You might think, yeah, this is really light for me, but yeah, sure, it's light, but it's a new product. It's obviously, as Chris said, it's in preview. So Microsoft's gonna build upon it. The good thing is you don't have to boil the ocean. if you're a small shop, for a backup, you can start small, and this might even cover all your bases. Um, if you want to do just the basics, depending on, like Chris said, some companies have compliances for 7 years. They have to keep the data, or they have to go about abide by SOC or HIPAA,
Right.
or those kind of things. So yeah, then absolutely that becomes more complicated. Then you might need those kind of tools. But right off the bat, this is right off the start. This is out of the gate. You don't even need to turn anything on. It's just a matter of the setup. So yeah.
No, and I love that. As I think through a lot of this stuff, years ago, and just looking at the slide, I mean, if folks that are watching this can read through along with us, but, you'd have a server, you need to install an agent on it, then you need to prepare the data and make sure that you're using the right account and, go through all this rigmarole to get things set up. This approach using the Business Continuity Center really, as we'll see and talk about here shortly, it's really like yes, it could be a 100, but it could also be a 400 level for folks that really want to dig into it. So it's designed to be meeting folks at their level of experience and expertise with BCDR, with backup, with resiliency planning and whatnot. But again, I like this middle bullet. One of the things that rings true to me is just that streamlined recovery process, which we'll see over time here. Just gives that ability to really go and say, here's my orchestrated, like a couple buttons to push or whatever else to bring things back to life. So, all right. So, towing into some use cases. This is great, right? Abdul, Chris, great stuff. But why would I use it? Again, DR planning. So, whether existing business, existing company, organization, or even a new, it's always important to kind of, 'tis the season to sit down and review what's going on. And do you meet? Are you efficient? Are you meeting your recovery time objectives and, recovery cost objectives? Can I maybe, save a little money, but still get, the same disaster recovery plan put in place? So super essential just to review and kind of plan and look through those plans if they are already existing, to make sure that we're minimizing downtime, ensuring that same consistency, while kind of trying to duck and avoid any kind of system failures that might be creeping up. Protocols. This is not necessarily just an IT thing, right? When it comes down to it, it's a business resiliency or business continuity type of thing where, typically we have owners of the business that are really saying, hey, we need to be, I don't know, it's like maybe a law firm. The attorneys are always working 24/7. They need to be up and running fairly quickly. My organization, pretty quick to make sure that we have, tier 1 applications are, 4 to 6 hours. The next tier is 8 hours or beyond. Next tier beyond that is, 24 hours or so. So protocols is really what I'm getting at there is, policies, your SOPs, protocols for making sure that you respond promptly, quickly with a good rigid plan. And those procedures, just making sure that they're up to date, right? As we look at Azure specifically and any of these cloud products, they change so very frequently. If we're not reviewing and planning, every so often, maybe a checkpoint of every couple months, just to make sure that there aren't any feature changes or something has been deprecated, but making sure that those restoration procedures are up to date and ready to use when the time comes.
No, that's all good information.
All right. Data backup and restoration. again, just thinking through the quickness, the agility for making sure that this the why we're doing what we're doing. It's like that it's available, whether it's say data, whether it's actual documents or files or services, server, OS's components of the any services that are running. Plus, we want to make sure that we can restore that we have it secure, and that we don't have our backup folks going and digging for this manually and searching and whatnot. So, Abdul, any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, funny story. I was reading online on social media, going through, and some company got ransomware, and they're like, "Oh, okay, cool. We got ransomware. That's fine. We have the backups." And then they went to the IT admin, like, "Oh, what are the backups?" He's like, "In the same environment that got ransomware." Like,
No.
yeah, exactly, right? So like that's really aha moment because one, you need to have a separate environment for your backup so you can restore in case something happens. Secondly,
Right.
the biggest thing I've seen, and I've lived through this, is we do not do enough of the restores or do a disaster recovery check-ins. Like every quarter or even minimum 6 months, you should
Yeah.
have a drill, disaster recovery drill, where you're like, yep, I'm going to restore this file. How long is it going to take me? Does it have all the information there? Can we do this? So those kind of things you have to go do the process. Honestly, it takes time, but honestly, I would rather do it when the emergency doesn't happen, because then you know that it works perfectly fine. If you're doing it when things happen, then yeah, you pretty much fail because the
Yeah.
backup might be corrupted. You might be just backing the corrupt data, and you might not be able to restore. I've actually had that, and in my Exchange days, Exchange mailbox could get corrupted very, very easily. So yeah, and you're backing them up multifold, and yeah, that's a problem. So yeah, those were fun days, but yeah, it's definitely you need to have those kind of
Mm.
things baked into your plan.
I don't know. I know we're not on video, but I might have to pour myself another eggnog here after hearing Exchange. So that's the last thing I thought we were going to talk about here, but that's okay. It's fine.
Honestly, anytime I think of a backup in a store, Exchange always comes to mind because
Yeah. Yeah.
there's always emails and data and attachments and all that. And people are like, that was the biggest thing people use. It funny, OneDrive doesn't come to mind, SharePoint doesn't come to mind. It'll always Exchange because mailbox getting deleted, emails getting deleted, and whatnot. So yeah.
Right. Nope. Good call out. Good call out. All right. Service availability. So again, I feel like little rinse repeat here, but just making sure that we actually do have reliable service during any kind of outage, whether planned or unplanned. Those failover strategies, again, Abdul, thank you for calling out the testing, because a lot of these tools now, not only do you have the ability to set up the replication primary, secondary locations, but you can kind of test some of the stuff out as well too. So it's a recommendation to actually go and do that every so often, just to make sure that things do work, that it's the right coverage, that you got the right data. But again, just making sure that continuous delivery is happening in your environment.
Yeah, and one thing I want to call out here from an availability standpoint is, I know, again, from a cloud standpoint, we think, hey, it's the cloud, everything is going to be available, but you'll be surprised. So a perfect example is, you might have your main environment might be in the US or US region, and you might say, yeah, that environment just went down. I need to restore this in the Europe environment or in Canada or some of the Americas. Guess what? That service might not even be available in that region.
Yeah.
So you won't be able to restore that. So that's another thing that you have to account for. That's what you want to do, restores and find out, yep, this service is in the region or it's not in the region. How do we do this now, right? We're stuck. So
Right.
then, yeah, you're not going to meet your SLAs.
And that makes me think of something else too. Abdul, you triggered something in my mind thinking about um, don't take for granted that the region that you have backed up or replicated this data to has enough resource availability for you to turn those services up to. I can count on both hands the times that I've seen folks that are, it's like, yeah, we have copies of copies and we've replicated, we've done all the right things, but everyone had a service outage in region X, and they tried to stand up all their services in region Y, and region Y didn't have enough availability. So be careful with that. Make sure that those are your zonal and regional design and planning is in play too. So good one. All right, I might have stolen our own thunder here, but as we talked about redundancy, again, just make sure that you're putting your resources in the right locations. The Microsoft and other cloud providers all have details on regional pairs, zonal pairs for for availability zones and whatnot. You want to make sure that you include that as part of this design. Yeah, it's fine. Say it just back up, but it really isn't. You still have to fully design and architect where your services and where your resources are going for recovery purposes. So those recovery vaults, the whole 9 yard, got to be included in that design. And failover systems, again, just making sure that you also have access to get to this as well. So maybe you're not fully using everything that Azure has to offer. You might have other tools and whatnot. You want to make sure that if you do have administrative workstations for some of this too, just make sure that those are available as well. The tooling is available to you because it may not always just be on your administrative workstation that's in front of you or laptop or whatever else. If you're using AVS or AVD, so Azure Virtual Desktops or whatever else to manage some of the stuff. Just make sure that those are available as well. Do any other thoughts?
No, I think you covered Chris.
All right.
Oh, that's a busy slide, but yeah, I guess we can talk about this. Yeah, again, from a data protection, I kind of already talked about the ransomware. So this is becoming a major issue for a lot of companies. Every day we hear it's not if it's going to be, it's like when are you going to be, getting affected with ransomware? Nobody can protect you. So data protection is absolutely critical because then if you have the data saved somewhere as a backup properly, then yeah, you're like, no issues there. And that honestly kind of goes hand in hand into encryption techniques, because if your data is properly protected and encrypted, no issue. So we've heard stories where people were working on laptops and they had PII, personal identifying information on laptops. But the good thing is those laptops were had BitLocker encryption on, and somebody left the laptop or it got stolen from a car. Um, you have that, so you're protected now. Otherwise, you'll have to not only inform internal IT but external IT, but then the agencies, the governments, and all that stuff becomes a PR nightmare. So that is becoming a challenge now, and that also goes into hand in hand from a access control standpoint. Who is having access? Why is anybody even having access? I still see a lot of people giving people full keys to the kingdom, meaning I'll just make them a global admin. I'm like, no, that's a big no-no. Why would you do that? You need to really go and create a custom role if you want to provide them access. Um, Microsoft does a phenomenal job on the custom roles on the RBAC side of things, so you can definitely take a look. And then from even control access controls, like you can do um, MFA and access, those kind of things. So conditional access policies. So there's so many controls that Microsoft is building in now just to access the data, um, that that should become easy to control. And one thing I also want to talk about the data protection is I still see a lot of companies not classifying their data. That's the biggest thing, mistake you can make, but not classifying. Because if you treat all data the same, then yeah, you're at a loss. Because the problem is, keep in mind, we're creating so much data, you cannot back everything up now. So we need to really classify your data, um, and could be highly confidential, and that data is going to be protected differently than data which like your logs and those kind of things, which is important and it might be critical data, but it's not confidential or highly sensitive data. So that also makes a difference from that, not only cost, but the way you're going to be storing that data and whatnot. So that comes into the data integrity piece. So I think that's crucial. And then lastly, I'll cover the regular audits. We kind of talked about one. You have, as Chris mentioned, the the regulated industries. They have to have audits every year, and they have to kind of keep data for 7 years for auditing purposes. Um, Plus compliance. If you are in a financial institution, you might have to abide by SOC 2, or if you take credit cards, then you have to do the credit card industry compliance. So those kind of things have to be played out, and those things have to be made sure that you're passing those audits. Chris, any words of wisdom there?
Yeah, so I was, you could tell I'm sitting here like, biting my lip. And you said access controls. I love RBAC. I love PIM more. So privileged identity management is really a key thing that we can kind of utilize here too. So for folks that are using that, it's a little bit more of a, just in time, just enough access approach. So again, complete separate session. We could go through all of that, but that's key here too, because for something, say something did come up, I could go and basically, when I say PIM up, but I could actually go and knock on the door from this library of roles that I might have available to me. I could utilize, a backup administrator or whatever custom role might be created, go and do the work that I need to do. And then that disappears after a certain amount of time, or I can make it go after I'm done with it. So, less access to any kind of sensitive data, just a higher security level. And in my experience, auditors love to see that being used. So really cool feature there.
No, good call out there. Yeah, I agree. Both PIM and PAM are phenomenal too, and they go hand in hand, right? So yeah, privilege identity management and then privilege access management both go hand in hand. So yeah, you can kind of take that into the access control and make it better.
Sweet. All right. And then, I think the ultimate goal, right, is minimizing downtime and data loss. So, again, we talked a little bit briefly, but we'll dive just a bit deeper here. Proactive monitoring. So, typically we would know when services are starting to fail or starting to, give us some ill feelings. Users might be running into something, or us as admins might be running into some service availability. It's key that we can detect that in advance. We know what's going on, and then we can kind of make a decision whether it's something we want to, pull the trigger on and automatically handle, or, utilize some other process. Tying into that automated recovery, again, I would say, crawl, walk, and run approach. When you're in that run level, probably a phase 2 or 3 of this setup, you would be kind of evaluating, can I utilize that proactive monitoring to automatically kick off a recovery or failover or whatever that situation might be. Full end-to-end orchestration that helps just keep the business running smoothly. I look at over time, I feel like the amount of folks that are, being called to that table for backup operations or whatever else, that size table might be declining. So, the more that you can automate, the more that you can kind of focus and be in the discussion live, saying, here's our next steps, here's, whatever else that we need to kind of handle. You want to offset that as much as possible, especially if you're the, person or team responsible for these types of recovery processes. And then, just tying into that efficiency, you want to make sure that the process itself is efficient and that you as a human are, as efficient as well, making sure that there are, no mistakes, no disruption, getting services back up and functional as quick as possible. So any other thoughts, Abdul?
No, I just, from a automation recovery process standpoint, you have to have those controls built in because you have to have automation. Sometimes the recovery has to be automated just to save time, right? Because not everything can be manual. And then efficient data backup solution is important. Like I talked about the different classifications, but you you need to also do deduping, meaning you have to make sure that you have data backed up and you're not backing the same data multiple times, because then that's going to cost you more data, and more data needs to be backed up. So those efficiencies have to be also built in.
Good call. Yeah, and as we're kind of talking about the efficiencies and whatnot, again, towing into why is it important to have a lot of this operationalized and orchestrated. If you're talking about full site recovery, it's not just one VM, it's not just one service. You're talking orchestration of hundreds, maybe thousands of services. So you want to make sure that that entire site can be handled in a in a downtime or loss scenario. Again, at that point, you really don't want to be in a manual backup position. You really want to make sure that you're fully automated, especially for that failover approach. One, it's failover mechanisms these days will check more granularly what has succeeded or failed. There might be like partial successes where something is missed. You could retry just a piece of it, and it's not the entire site recovery or failover approach, which is nice. I know there was a point in time where we didn't have that. We'd have to start from scratch and start over. So, having that ability to kind of monitor end to end every step of the way is key. And then again, just a seamless transition. We really, we don't want the business owners to really see a ton of downtime. We don't really, honestly, I don't think any of us want to be on calls for when that happens. We just want to say, hey, look, it's a thing. We know it was a roadblock or whatever, and everything seamlessly just transitioned as if it was a flip of a switch, as best we can make that happen. So.
Yeah, and one I also want to call out is a lot of people are doing site recovery. So in the cloud, so you might have a lot of backup, or you might have an on-prem data center, and your site recovery is going to be in the cloud. A lot of people are moving away from the private site recovery. So they're like, we don't want to have another data center just for site recovery. We're going to do our site recovery in the cloud, regardless of the hypervisor, AWS, Azure, or GCP. So that also needs to be built in into the equation. The cost, the recovery times, all that stuff, because
data transfers can be very expensive as well. And then what kind of data transfer are you looking for? So if it's massive, then yeah, you would need express route versus can you get away with a site-to-site VPN? So those things also have to be part of the equation.
Yeah. Good call. Good call. As if we wanted folks to make sure that this is automated as much as possible. We're repeating a little more automation details. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But again, at the end of the day, it's like we want to make sure that compliance is met, that simplification of that backup process is done, that everything that we had told to be resilient, to be redundant, to be available on backup or restore scenario, that it's consistent, that it's exact, and that it brings back the exact copies that we need in the exact arrangement that's required or needed, and then just making sure that our recovery time is met. To Abdul's point, it's like yeah, we could set this up and configure and design all we want, but if we didn't think about the network that's required for Azure and whatnot for our services, we might be trying to pump, I don't know, terabytes worth of data over a site-to-site VPN that may not work as well as we want it to. So make sure that that's taken into consideration. We do want it to be effortless, but we also need to kind of make sure that our recovery time objectives are met with proper design and proper automation. So.
Yeah, and the other thing is also if you look at Azure is such a big service. So if you, for example, if you look at the Azure, if you look at the PaaS environment, right, on the SQL Server side, SQL PaaS is going to be very different than SQL on a VM because SQL PaaS comes with your native backups. It's all automated. You can back up even every hour, or you can even choose how quickly it backs up, right? So those kind of things are already built in. But with this, since this mainly covers the kind of the VM, you have to be a little bit more on the lookout of how the automation is going to work.
Love it, love it. All right. So from a compliance perspective, again, just making sure that we're meeting our regulatory standards, right? Even in the event of failure or whatever else, we want to make sure there's no gap in protection. We want to make sure that we're following security standards, that there's no data that's unprotected, that's inadvertently accessible by someone else, no matter where that data is being stored. So again, you think of RBAC, firewall, other components that are all at play here. And then that sensitive data. I know we mentioned earlier, classification is key, but encryption as well on top of that. It's just a huge step in the right direction to make sure that we're compliant and secure throughout. Any other thoughts there, Abdul?
No, I think from a compliance and security measurements, right? It's more about the compliancy that is going to matter to the company because then if you have customers that require that compliancy, and if you don't, and if something happens, then yeah, your business could be liable. If you're hosting somebody else's data, then yeah, the liability is on you. So protection sensitive data is critical. From a compliance standpoint, they might come back to you. So yeah, all those things are critical.
All right. So now that we've chit-chatted about a bunch of these things, we're going to try and live demo a wee bit of this, and we'll see how this. So a couple resources out here again, demo MVP environment. So there's all kind of wonderfully broken things and naughty VMs, all kind of good stuff like that. But what we're focused on here is the Business Continuity Center. So again, for folks who haven't seen this before, we're just going to do a brief walkthrough of some places to look and toy and learn. So as we go into Business Continuity Center, we'll see this little reminder. So anybody who's used the Azure Backup Center, I know it's been tied to Admin Center and all kind of different things. It's been around the block for a little while. This Azure Business Continuity Center is meant to be a little more enhanced. So as I say that, on this overview page, you'll see very quickly counts of virtual machines, protection status of your environment, a little bit of a more holistic view of which VMs may be protected or resources are protected in both primary and secondary versus maybe just in the secondary environment or not protected at all. Some details around BCDR and security coverage. Again, don't overlook some of these info buttons or documentation around these things. Microsoft has some really good details about security levels on these. So for me, unfortunately, I've apparently have some deficiencies in security measures. So I might maybe have different things turned off, soft deletes. Don't do that. Other different data protection pieces that might not be in place. Other reversible things like maybe I could go out and actually delete different parts of this VM unexpectedly. So again, you would want to see yourself at least at a fair, good, or even excellent. Probably don't want to be down in this poor security or not available. But again, just calling that out. You'll see other things like alerting over the past 24 hours. This environment, I don't have many alerts set up just yet. But if I did, this is where they would show, again, that single pane and then a protection compliance. So when we say compliance, a lot of Azure policy driven things, and we can dig into that here in a second. So one of the things that we'll look at first is just seeing, what available resources are protectable. So that doesn't mean that these are protected right now, just that these are available VMs in my environment that I could select and configure protection and, kind of work through whether it's a recovery or backup, where to store them, how to store them, what kind of policies and whatnot I want to put on them. We'll dig into the protected items and show at least the existing VMs and how they're currently protected. You'll see at the top, this menu, very quick to call out, either configure protection for devices that are not currently protected, either in a, we say protected like a replicated or, backed up scenario. Or a quick to recover. So if I had these, two Azure Virtual Desktop machines that are both protected in primary and secondary, I could select recover. I could come into protected item, and hopefully very quickly, if it finds it, we'll try one more time because the cloud is being silly with both of us today. We'll try recover one more time. We'll say backup restore. That's fine. There we go. So now I have the ability to say, here's one of the items. I pick this, VM, and I could continue, and then I should have the ability to select restore points. So I have an application consistent restore point from earlier this morning. I could click OK and continue on and basically allow that restore to happen from a manual perspective. So from the perspective of a not protected, Abdul, I know we've made it 45 minutes through and we haven't mentioned one word that starts with C and ends with O pilot.
Yes.
So One thing we could do is just kind of demo here, and I'm going to pause because we have this big button up the top. Copilot is integrated with Business Continuity Center. So I'm going to say, I'll skip the new chat because this is nice and clean, so we're good. I'm just going to type in show the BCDR real estate across all the subscriptions. Now, fun story. I only have one subscription in this particular environment, but that's fine. Again, demo. It kind of gets the light bulb going. Think about how you could use this in your environment. So while I was talking, Copilot went out and it found the same thing that we have on the left or middle part of the screen. It's 4 protected items, additional 15 protectable items, and then it shows me the KQL. Thank you, Copilot. This is wonderful stuff. Shows me how I could get that information for myself. Maybe I wanted to set up a monitor or whatever else. I could click to select and copy that, and throw it into my alerts. But why am I really here? Well, I see that there are 2 that are not protected. Well, maybe I could click this button and I could go through and do the whole thing, but maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want Copilot to help me. So Copilot nicely prompted, do you want any enhanced protection for data sources? Sure. So I'm going to click next, and it's going to start walking me through this. So Copilot's going to tell me, hey, maybe you want to take these 2 VMs, and it's going to determine what I want to do next. And hopefully Copilot has not been drinking any more eggnog. It said no data source selected. So let's try one more time. But if this were to actually go through and do its thing, would be very similar, I'd say a little more efficient than even me fumbling and clicking through the configure protection button. So let's select one of these this time. Maybe we'll select 2. Yeah, here we go. So see, Copilot could have reminded me to select one of the VMs. I missed that part, but that's okay. Feedback for Copilot. So I have the option to say, do you want enhanced protection for the selected data source? So sure, let's do it. So Copilot will walk me through this, and it will say, here's the vault that maybe I want to use, or an existing resource group. I could go through and select what resource group and backup policy, the whole 9 yards, and then just walk through and enable the backup. So pretty easy. I could ask it, if I didn't really know what I was doing in this environment, I could ask Copilot some questions, give me some feedback on how to actually handle this setup. So pretty slick. Sorry for the trip up the first time, but that's all right. What else could we quickly cover here? So security and threat management. Excuse me. Again, for folks that are, kind of looking at policy and compliance in the environment, maybe we have other, vulnerability management tools. We're using, Azure policy and deployment stacks against these to make sure that, the data is always encrypted, and, this, secure endpoints are turned on and whatnot. And maybe this could be increased from poor to something else. I can see that view here, whether it might be managed in other parts of the environment within Defender or, inside of Purview or where have you. It's nice that this kind of unifies and bleeds back into this Business Continuity Center. So from a policy perspective, there are a lot of preview policies that are available for folks who've used, dare I call it blueprints. I think we were talking about that earlier, but blueprints that turned into policy. This is now a little more grown up. We can apply any of these simply by selecting and then going through the process of saying, here's the resources that I want to include, ones that I want to maybe exclude. But I can also create other definitions or initiatives as well. directly from inside of the BCC. Do any other thoughts or anything here that you might want me to call out?
No, you pretty much covered it, right? Like, there's so much going on with this. Like, we can probably talk for hours, not hours. But again, the thing that we want you to get out of this is this is a great way to have a backup solution for you. Make sure that all your resources are backed up, and you have a plan for not only backup but restoration as well. And then you can also the good thing is you can go through the security posture. It's going to give you show you how things are going, if it's up to par with Microsoft services or not. But yeah, uh, there's so much that I think we probably could do another session on it from a technical aspect. But I think we've done a good job on the review side of things. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and again, I know we briefly skipped over the monitoring, but just from a job and reporting perspective, folks that have been familiar with the backup center, that all has been ported into here as well. So very quickly you can see across your state, like what's completed, failed, anything that's been canceled. So you can kind of troubleshoot from here. But yeah, good stuff. All right. We're going to minimize and go back to one last slide. So hopefully you all enjoyed this content that Abdul and I have put together. Hopefully you've enjoyed our hijinks back and forth, or merry cheer. So thank you for your time. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you again to the FestiveTechCalendar crew. Kudos for continuing this for the community, for the recipients of any kind of fundraising. We appreciate you. Any parting words, Abdul?
No, this was great, Chris. Thanks for putting this together. I know you did majority of the work on this one. But yeah, always appreciative of the Festive Tech folks, the organizers, putting this together. We being the cause, we know how challenging it can be, and it takes a lot of effort to put these things together. So again, thanks everybody, and then hopefully to our audience, hopefully you love the content. If you want to see more of this, reach out to us. We'll be happy to get more content out to you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye now.
Thanks so much. Okay. Bye now.